very last Zoom, so it has to be really hard.
Yeah, Dan is going to miss Zoom so much that he wanted to make sure that his screen looked completely different and he had to fix it.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
Where they'll go again? Oh my God. Okay, there. Okay, everyone's now back with pictures. It's great. How are you, Allie?
Oh, I'm doing okay. How are you? Last Zoom meeting.
I know, I'm so excited. I want to I don't know if I want to tear up the sheet or if I want to laminate it or something. I'm not sure.
Two ends of the emotional spectrum, yeah.
Welcome, Joe.
Oh, throwing peace signs. Whoa. Is that a day?
I'm all about the peace. That's kind of it's one thing that's good to get behind, peace. No one can ever say, you know what? I think peace sucks. I've never heard that phrase before. That's just me. You know, you may have, but I haven't. So
Nice. Welcome, Dennis. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, Dennis?
hola.
All right. Let's call this meeting of the Hartford Select Board to order. Oops. At 6 o'clock on Tuesday, June 1st. As chair of the Town of Hartford Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 Act 92, the public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with a temporary amendment to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone, video, or other electronic means, with additional access offered through telephone, Zoom, and YouTube.com. We're using Zoom for this remote meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the platform. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in the meeting by going to https://zoom.us/j/54979933. Please mute your microphone. youtube.com/JTV810. Click live now. If you're calling in from a phone, dial 415-762-9988. Type in the room ID of 549-799-933, followed by the pound sign. Press pound a second time, press *9 to raise your hand for public comment. Providing public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting using telephone, Zoom, and youtube.com on our posted meeting agenda. Instructions have also been provided on the town website under the agendas and minutes. We're continuing the meeting if necessary. In the event the public's unable to access this meeting, it will be continued to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting, they're not unanimous, will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all select board members participating in this meeting. So Allie, are you here?
I'm here.
Great. Kim, are you here? Yep, she's raising her hand and about to unmute herself. There we go. Welcome, Kim. Joe, are you here?
Here.
Great. Dennis, you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And that is our select board makeup at this time. And I'm excited to tell you that if all goes as planned, this will be our last Zoom meeting. So we'll meet again officially on the 15th. It will be a meeting that will be open to the public here in Town Hall. So we hope that you will join us here. Thank you. Okay, we'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
One flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so next up on our agenda is the Main Street construction update. So over to the town manager. So thank you, Tracy. When you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Oh, Dan, I got feedback. Will you mute? Will you turn your, never mind. I got you. Thank you, Dan. So Town Street construction update. When we last met, I I was pretty sure that we were going to be breaking ground on the phase 2 of the project, which is around North Main Street, South Main Street, and Joe Reed Drive. And since then, so it's been about a month, things have changed. After providing that update, I was able to learn through some good questioning that there were some additional items that needed to be addressed before breaking ground on that project. I don't want to say that there was any one reason why some of these items were missed. My staff has been continuing to pursue these issues, but we had some turnover in my office, and there were some communication issues at the state level due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of them are still working from home, and it's slowed down their process in some ways that I don't think they anticipated and that we were not aware of. I do really, again, want to thank our finance department, who just continue to persist in getting documents properly executed. We saw that previously when we authorized Dan and I to sign many of these documents that allow us to okay processes around these large construction documents that hadn't been really well maintained with all of the different people who have sat in my seat. I also have spent countless hours with our public works and planning staff, as well as state staff, learning more about this project and looking at the best path forward for the town. Ultimately, it was my decision to make, and I decided that we should begin the construction process for phase 2 in the spring of 2022, not the summer of 2021. So we will not be digging up the corner of North Main, South Main, and Joe Reed Drive until the spring of 2022. There are a couple of reasons. I want to make sure that all of the paperwork for this really complex process is properly executed, that my staff has everything that they need, that the state has everything that they need, and that we have a clear path going forward that allows us to manage such a large project administratively as smooth as we can. And it also gives us time to actually get the super duper final plan designs approved by the state. There are ways forward where we don't have the final approval. It's a little bit more of a risk adverse decision, but one that I thought with COVID, with turnover in my office, with turnover at the select board, looked to be a little bit more of the conservative but appropriate approach. And it puts us in a better position for making sure that with all of our ducks in a row, we have really good, clean path forward to our funding opportunities. We're not going to be scrambling, like I've heard from a few of you on the select board, to get things signed, to get things executed, to get things finalized. I'm excited about that. It doesn't help any of my staff or myself when we are scrambling to get something finalized. It also has some silver linings, and we're all realizing that these are fantastic silver linings. It means that we can determine if we can extend on-street dining into the summer. There are a couple of considerations that I have bounced out to staff that I need to get their answers on. And it allows us to brainstorm if there's some minor modifications that we can make to the streetscaping. When I say streetscaping, I mean the trees and the lighting and the planter boxes and what that all looks like when you actually look out on the street. One of my staff members eloquently put it that we have to bake the same cake. So the plans are already developed for that infrastructure that you're not going to see, that's going to carry your clean water and your drinking water, but we can figure out how to decorate the cake a little bit more. So we're going to be working on that in the next couple of weeks for my staff to see what's possible, what's plausible, what the best cost situation is going forward, and should be able to come up with something here in the next month. I did report in my agenda memo, there's no direct anticipated fiscal impact. We were able to work that out. So besides continuing rising cost of construction materials, and that's something we'll just need to remain attentive to. And I think everyone in the country is remaining attentive to the rising construction material costs. I'm happy to entertain questions. Kim, go for it.
Thanks. So there is likely to be, I'm delighted with this outcome. I guess I'll start by saying that. And I know I don't want to kick the can down the road any further. I've expressed my opinions to Tracy and Dan at great length. And also expressed that I hope that the construction will start as early in the spring 2022 as possible, in the hopes that, I mean, is there any chance it will be completed in that one construction season? Because I think we were talking about this year branching over two.
At this point, I don't have that answer. That's the work that we're going to do in the coming weeks is, okay, what does this actually mean? And the hard balance is, I want to say we need a good winter. But we also, it depends on how long winter goes. Looking at what phase one did, I don't know if that's a really strong possibility that it will be done in one season, considering what we've seen this year with like lack of staffing, rising construction costs, contractors just being absolutely chock-a-block full. Those are all things that I don't anticipate ending in 2022.
For sure. And maybe there'll actually be some advantage to booking that, like trying to contract for spring 2022 instead of late summer 2021. So is there any anticipation, like how will it be funded if that, so we've gotten the bond approval, the TIF bond approval for those phases. And if the construction costs are, because we know that they're high and right, I mean, maybe they'll come back down again by then. That would be amazing. Not likely, but possible. But I guess, I mean, are we going to have to go back before the voters if there are contracts, or do we are the contractors we're working with, we're locked in with them, or no, because we haven't even put it out to bid yet? Okay. I guess, sorry, I'm just.
You're becoming a junior construction manager, Kim. That's correct. We are going to finish all this up. There's going to be just a nice line in the sand, so to speak. We're going to finish this up with what we've got going on, and then we will be opening up for bid. So there's no other sort of obligation that we have where we would have outstanding funding or funding that's expiring or any of those sorts of things. And that's where the lion's share of the time was spent with some of my staff, was to just really dig in on that one.
Okay, I guess in that case, I would just say, please just keep us posted of how it.
Thanks, Kim. Other questions? All right, let's go. It looks like we'll bring David Briggs over for a question if it's related to this topic. And please state your name, where you live, and no personal attacks, and we'll give you 3 minutes to share. So go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, David.
Okay, I'm David Briggs, White River Junction. I will take 1 minute. I'm pleased to hear the news, and I applaud Tracy for being decisive. It's a sign of a good leader. I like that personally. And I want to echo Kim's comment about starting as early as possible. And if I had spoken tonight about the upcoming project being imminent, what I would have said was, please send us the Director of Public Works to meet with us on the downtown scene in sort of a neutral spot like a Newberry Market, where we could have a little bit of a friendly press conference to just field the usual questions on the nitty-gritty of construction management and the impacts on us. So I would ask that you consider doing that early in the new year. And again, thanks for the clarity and the decisiveness. And I agree, the silver lining will be a really upbeat summer recovery from COVID. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, let's bring Lenny Collins over, please. So CATV, can we bring Lenny Collins over, please?
did move him over, Dan.
He's not showing up on panelists yet. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, sorry, thank you. Lenny Collins from Hartford. My question, I guess, is that I understand that we only have a certain amount of time to use up TIF funds. And if we delay this project, that means that we push down the road the number of TIF projects that we're able to get done, because we only have a certain amount of time to do them in. So with that being said, what was the next project after this and after that for TIF funds? And are we going to lose a project because we're not doing this TIF funded project this year? Because we only have a certain amount of years that we have to use up this TIF funding. What's the impact on that?
That's a really good question. And Lori's here upstairs watching. So she's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but TIF funding is good until 2023, 2024, Lori? I'm looking.
Right. So let me just clarify. There's a distinction between when we are going out to debt and incur debt. And once we incur debt, we don't lose that money. So we do have another 3-year extension that we did get that brought us from 21 to 24. That means in the fall of 2023, we would have the opportunity to do our final, obligation of funds through the voters. So those are things we're going to look at. Obviously, is we have a little bit under $2 million that we have available for additional expenditure. And we will be programming that out and certainly have plenty of community discussion about it. But what we're talking about is once that debt is obligated, and that is mean take a loan out or whatever it is that we decide to do, we can spend that for the next, we're not limited in when we spend it as long as we've incurred the debt.
Follow up, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
So there was no actual planned project or 2 planned projects after this that we will not be able to do because of this delay. Am I correct in that assessment? Or was there more planned projects that we may now lose because of this delay?
You want me to take the stab at that, Tracy? Okay. So we have a couple other projects on the books that we have to finish up with. We've done a substantial portion of the projects that were in the TIF plan. Those are things over the course of the next year we'll be looking at and saying, okay, what's the next thing to bring up for community discussion and before the voters for consideration of that final obligation of dollars. Whether that is with something that is already ongoing and we discover we need more money to go towards a particular function of it. There's a little bit of work in our planned programming that still can be done for the $13 million that is part of the financial plan.
Thank you very much, sir. That answered my question.
Thank you, Lenny. Thanks, Lori. All right, let's bring Marcy Bartlett over, please.
Hi, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Marcy Bartlett Wilder. I wanted to thank you for however you did the, however you finessed this so that our downtown businesses can stay afloat this summer by continuing to be able to serve the public and bring in the revenue that has been lost during COVID. And thank you, Lanny, for the question you asked about the TIF financing. I was under that impression as well. And I understand that we're not going to lose that as a source, funding source for what needs to be done. Mostly, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for the ground rules you've put in for the listening meetings. I really like that. I think it's productive and sets some good ground rules. So mostly just thank you.
Thanks, Christy. I think the thanks goes to Tracy and the staff because they were the ones that made this work for us. So it goes to
I
them.
know.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Any other questions from board members or anyone else? Okay. Looks like then we'll go back to Tracy for our date selection for our special election.
Don't worry, everyone. I have plenty of water for all the talking that I'm doing this evening at the beginning of this meeting, and I'm hoping to listen in a little bit as we move forward in our agenda. The next item you're going to see before you is a motion item, and it's a recommendation for setting the special election date. As always, my staff, amazing human beings doing this work every day here at Town Hall. Lisa O'Neill worked with the Secretary of State. This is unprecedented. This is something that has not ever happened in Hartford. And when we asked around, it seems like it doesn't happen that often in other municipalities. So we got to have some fun conversations with the Secretary of State about something that doesn't happen that often. Many thanks to the resident who brought this to our attention as we were all just trying to keep our legs moving forward here in the town as we barreled through the summer. If you notice on these dates that this all happened, my staff, thank goodness, was in the middle of doing some of this stuff with the downtown construction, and they helped me manage all of those projects all at once. So this is a pretty straightforward item in that special elections are governed by the Secretary of State. There is not much wiggle room for any of us. These things have to be laid out in this process. And you'll see that checklist of some of the timelines that need to be adhered to. Based on those, the other factors we considered when proposing this timeline, my staff and I included the workload of the clerk's office. There's only 2 people there and they do a lot of work for us. So we didn't want to ask them to double down on a time period that was really busy for them, which brought us further into the summer. We wanted to make sure that the chair and vice chair of the Board of Civil Authority were aware of this and that we had at least one of them on hand. They're some of our subject matter experts for doing this work when it comes to election time. And we need to make sure that the gym was open. So we needed to have this all happen before the kids got back into school because they use the gym. And while we're happy to have an election happen in the gym, and that was an option we wanted to get done before we had the teachers and the students back. So while developing this timeline, staff also discussed providing sufficient time for potential candidates to draft and finalize their consent forms, which asks them some questions, and do any personal research on attending meetings, asking questions of current select board members, reviewing documents. I know that our budgets and our strategic plans are big pieces of documentation, and I wanted to make sure that people had time to review those. So thank you for the staff that brought up that concern and worked with me to find sufficient time in the timeline. So you'll see that the timeline below that I propose is for an August 10th, 2021 special election. It requires 2 quick movements from the select board. First off, tonight, we need to approve a date. And then we need to come back 2 weeks later and approve the warning. These are very standard warnings. They are the ones that we use for all public elections, but it is part of the process to have everyone approve the warning and make sure that we're doing it all correctly. We can post the warning as soon as July 1st, and candidate positions will be due to the clerk by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, July 6th. We get an extra day because the 4th of July is technically celebrated on the 5th of July in terms of city, town, and state office closures. So we get a little extra day on that one. By the 9th, the voter checklist must be posted. And by the 21st, ballots will be available to the public. And we'll hold the special election on the 10th of August. Because I was curious about this, and I know that you all are, and it's point of making sure that we can get as many folks out as possible. You can vote in person on the day of the election, you can call the clerk's office to request a mailed ballot, or you can vote in person at the clerk's office during normal business hours starting on July 21st. So if someone out there works or is going to be out of town or on vacation on the 10th, there are a couple of other ways that you can get out and get your vote. Fiscal impact, we estimate that this will cost $6,000 to $7,000. This includes paying for the Board of Civil Authority. They do get compensated for their time spent at the election day, as well as the assistant election officials. It's not much, just thanks them for their time. We have to print ballots and we have to program the tabulators. My understanding is that we're still working out the details of where this funding is going to come, but it will come both from the clerk's office. They were smart and held back a little bit of election costs and have been very prudent with their money. And we'll also be looking at other departments to make up the rest of this cost. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I'm curious, and not to ask anybody to do any more work, and I know we wouldn't do something like a town meeting day, but will there be any opportunity for some sort of, informal or other variation of candidates night with a special election, or does that not kind of fit into this special circumstance?
There's no state requirement. So that is something that could come from you all. And we could make a decision on that tonight that you would like to have something to happen, whether that is a candidate's night or a town meeting item, but that's not required for any of this process. So it's really up to you all, and then I can take that back down to the staff and we can work on that.
CATV, you're not muted, just
Kim, and then Dennis.
Thanks. When I'm reading candidate petitions due to the clerk, does that mean that the requirement for signatures is back on? Because I know
all 2021 elections per the Secretary of State will not require signatures. It is solely the candidate petition.
Okay. And I'm sad to say that I won't be able to work the polls on August 10th, but I guess you'll manage without me, but thanks.
Dennis?
Thank you. I hadn't thought of what Ally just suggested, but I think that would be a great thing to have a candidates night so that candidates can present themselves and we can learn more about them. Thank you.
We can totally make that happen. Looking at the timeline, does anybody have an opinion on when abouts that would look good? I'm going to assume sometime between the 6th and the 21st.
I think it might be nice to see how many candidates we have. If we only have, in the past, we haven't had very many people that have run, so we can sort of look at that once we find out if there's any contested races.
Okay, maybe we can pencil something in and I can get that out to everyone and we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good, Dan. I didn't, if we only had 2 candidates to run, I guess we wouldn't need the candidates night so much. But if there's more than that, then it would be important. And if nobody else has questions, I'd be willing to move this. Okay. Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the select board set the date of the special election to Tuesday, August 10th, 2021, and direct the town manager to notify the town clerk of the date.
Thanks, Dennis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. We can do this thumbs up. If it's not unanimous, we will do a roll call. So it is unanimous. Thank you. Great. So we'll have an election on August 10th. Okay.
Can I just ask one more question relating to
Yes.
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any other issue or question that we might want to put on that ballot? Like having the opportunity for a special election? I mean, I'm not looking for things, but what I'd hate to have happen is for something to come up and us think, oh, we should have put that on the ballot in August. So if there's anything of that nature, that would be worth just keeping on the radar.
And not that I'm aware of, Kim, but yeah, good idea. Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again. Geez, Kim, thank you for mentioning that. I was trying to, in the microsecond I've had to think about this, you know, would it be appropriate to put parking meters back on the ballot? And if we did, I would hope that we'd have more of a sales pitch on why this is important and may benefit the town rather than be a burden. But we all know it failed before, but I don't think it was put out there that all the benefits that might help the parking situation that we're going to talk about tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Kim, go ahead.
Well, just in response, I think I'll wait till the parking discussion, but I definitely have some thoughts on that, Dennis, and I'm guessing that at some point during the parking discussion, meters will be part of that conversation. So I'll talk about that then. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Joe, go ahead.
I would just have to piggyback and agree with Dennis. I think that when it was proposed originally, it seemed as if it was a bit of a cash grab by the town, and instead of it just trying to move cars through the town. So I really think a PR campaign, if we were to able to do that, a PR campaign on why they were important and not necessarily revenue for the town, but a way of moving cars through the downtown area.
Thanks, Joe. Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll go back to Tracy to kick off the downtown parking discussion.
All right, everybody. The first thing I wanted to do is just, oh my gosh, I sound like a broken record tonight, is to thank all of the staff who got together all of the historic documents for me. There's been a lot of conversations about parking over just even the last, Lana hates when I look at her, 6 years, 7 years. She went back just a little bit of time and she found me a lot of information. And one of the things that I heard from all of you as I've done my walkabouts and gotten coffee and all of those things is that we've always had these little discussions, but we've never sat down and really learned and listened from each other. And so I wanted to try something new. Thank you all for experimenting with me. If it fails, we'll tweak it and we'll try again in a couple of months. So as always, excited and nervous to see how this goes. I did reach out to the host with the most, the facilitator of Hartford, Chuck Worcester, who is on hand to help us take a little bit of time with these discussion questions and manage the conversation a little bit. So that way, even Dan and I can even participate or take notes or just listen and reflect on what we're hearing from folks rather than moving the whole parting forward. I wanted to talk a little bit about the overall goals for the listening session, which you saw in your packet, which is to provide a space for community members to learn about both the process behind town operations and how we all make decisions. We want to build understanding around the successes, challenges, and paths forward for various projects and issue areas. We want to gather community feedback and questions that can support us in both problem solving and thinking about progress in various projects as we move forward. And I think that this is really a chance for us to get together I bet remotely one last time and think about all of the different stakeholders that we have in Hartford and what they bring to the table. Ultimately, my goal as town manager, as you've already heard in the first 30 minutes of our meeting, is that we have some things to do in downtown White River Junction, and we have some plans and we have some needs. And I want to hear from people what their thoughts and opinions are and where they're coming from. So that way, when I'm making decisions in the future about funding, about priorities, about where to put my staff's time and attention, I can have those things and I can reflect back on them and reflect back on our written notes and see where we're going. So I just wanted to welcome Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. And I'm going to be a little bit on the timetable here and just keeping things moving along. I want to thank Allie. She came in to get her badge and her budget book on Friday. And I said, Allie, I'm going to talk for about the first 45 minutes of this meeting. Would you be willing to share the community guidelines? And she said, thank you. I would. And so I'm saying, thank you, Allie. I'm going to turn it over to Allie to read up the community guidelines so I can get some water.
Ah, yes, Tracy, get some water. And I'll put these in the chat as well, so folks have them. They're in your packets too, but just multiple places is always good. So thanks, Tracy, and to this town staff for letting me be a little bit of just sneak in there and be a little bit involved in the planning of the listening sessions. It's something that I'm really excited about. So I'm excited and appreciative of everybody that's here and who's going to engage with us. So those community guidelines in the chat are just some ways for us to, whether we are newer in this conversation or we've been to a lot of conversations about parking, for folks to be able to all engage in a way that folks get to share their voices and their ideas. So these are some things, and Chuck's going to help us with this, but that we're encouraging everybody to follow and to move us through in this conversation. So we encourage folks to approach topics curiously. Again, some folks maybe have been in lots of years-long conversations about parking and you're like, seen that, heard that, done that. But let's approach these conversations with curiosity, because when we do, we often learn a lot more. We're going to ask folks to contribute productively. And what we mean by that is, as you're thinking about what to share and what to contribute to this conversation, consider, is it something that is maybe very, very specific to your situation? Or is it something that, I think actually the whole group is going to benefit from this contribution or something that I have to share? So think about how you're contributing and err on the side of the latter and thinking about how it serves the learning and the listening of the group. And we're going to ask that you speak from your own experience. And only your own experience, because we can't make assumptions about anybody else's experience. We're going to consider multiple perspectives. We have lots of different perspectives in this conversation, so considering the value of everybody's perspectives. And we're going to respect expertise. So we have really incredible Hartford staff here and skilled professionals who are really good at what they do. And we also have folks who have lived experience with these different things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to respect the expertise of both. And sometimes critical feedback might come up. So when that does, we're critiquing an issue and not a person. And we're going to prioritize impact over intention. And what I mean by that is, so let's say you accidentally spill coffee on somebody. You're going to apologize, right? It was an accident, but you're still going to apologize and own that you did that. So sometimes with these conversations, right, we are here because we care a lot. And sometimes things get heated, or sometimes we say things that maybe we didn't mean or then didn't come out right. So in those situations, we're going to prioritize the impact and take responsibility when that happens. And just two more. I'm going to encourage folks to step up and step back. And what I mean by that is, if you're somebody who's more inclined to be speaking up a lot, then maybe you want to think about how you can step back a little bit and allow other voices to contribute. And I'll throw that to the select board in particular, because I know that folks get to hear from us a lot. And that's great, because we have lots of ideas and we want to make sure that we hear other people's ideas. And then also step up. So if you're somebody that maybe doesn't speak up as often, think about how you can step up and challenge yourself to do that and share your ideas. And finally, if you need any clarification, please pause us and ask. I know when I was looking through the parking packet, I was like, there is so much I do not know. So I might be asking a lot of clarifying questions. So wherever you are in your learning and your journey around parking, feel free to ask for clarification. So yeah, those are our guidelines.
Thank you, Tracy, for the introduction, and Ally, thank you for all those details and the ground rules there. That's helpful. And again, would like to welcome Chuck. So I think, Chuck, we will hand it over to you as the town moderator. And we appreciate you helping us run this first listening session. So welcome, Chuck.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to help out. And just clarify too that I'm happy to help as a volunteer facilitator, but this is not a moderator, not an official moderator duty. Just to be clear on that. So that's perfectly great. So it's a little bit funny here. We have a lot of us trying to run a meeting together, so we'll see how this all goes. But so the first thing we want to talk about is why are people parking downtown? And so I think, Dan, do you want me just to sort of call on people as their hands are raised?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Great.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah. So CATV, we have Marcy has her hand up. Let's see. We hear from Marcy.
Hi, Chuck. Marcy Bartlett from Wilder. The fact that we have a parking problem is a problem of growth, where for many people going to a downtown area is not their idea of a good time. So we should be thankful, I guess, that we have a problem to resolve, the problem of growth. I worked in downtown Hanover for 19 years, and parking was the thing that everybody rolled their eyes about. And it was not just a revenue stream, obviously it was, but it was an enforcement thing. The parking department of the municipality in town had an enforcement role for ticketing and resolving conflicts, et cetera. So parking and metering will bring a measure of attention needed to that. It changes the feel of a downtown area when people get a parking ticket. And I wanted to just bring that up as a matter of paying attention to that. I know that if our Hartford PD, which is currently understaffed, is handed a role for ticketing, I don't know what that would look like. And I would like to keep the convivial atmosphere that we have enjoyed all these years in our comings and goings in downtown without it being a turf war. So those are my thoughts.
Great, thanks, Marcy. The question in general, Kim asked on the chat, is why do we park downtown? So it's a little bit of a general question. We're going to look at a couple of other topics here as we go tonight. One, I think maybe Marcy, your comments are super germane to, which is why is parking important in a community? Some of the things that you touched on, and then we'll also have a little chance to talk about the impact on downtown businesses in particular. And then we'll talk about some next steps. So I'm sorry, Marcy, I wasn't super clear on the question, but I think your points fall under many of these categories. That's great.
All right, thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, next, Lenny Collins. Can he be moved over?
Thank you. I'm going to try to answer the question. The question that was asked is, why do we park downtown? Correct?
Yes, thanks. Yep.
So from my perspective, the reasons why there's parking taking place downtown, one of the primary things that I see happening is that there are many more residential housing units downtown than there ever has in the past. And there are a lot of residents in those units that are parking downtown and on the streets. That's the first part of the problem that I see. The second part is that there are many merchants who would love to have customers come to their shops. And that's the second part of the parking downtown. Customers parking. And can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Lenny. Yep.
Okay, sorry. And so there's the second part of this, that the customers are parking. And then thirdly, I believe that there's still some merchants themselves that are parking downtown. And that's the answer, my answer to the question of why do we park downtown? That's my perspective.
Nice, Lenny. That's great. Very on point. Yeah, we don't have any other hands up at the moment, but I think, I'm not sure if any board members or staff want to weigh in. I think Lenny covered, so residential, business customers, merchants. I think we probably would include, people at Northern Stage maybe as customers in a way. But maybe Kim, do you want to weigh in and add to that mix?
Yeah, I think Lanny also spot on. And by merchants, also just like employees that work in the restaurants and shops and offices in town. So, and that I think was one of the objectives. I think anyone that wants to go back and watch former Chief Caston's presentation on parking meters and what his recommendations were, a part of it was moving the longer term parkers off the main street so that visitors and customers would have a greater opportunity. And actually, so Chuck, are you going to introduce any specific parking meter topic, or should I interject with my comments on that now?
Yeah, our last section in particular will be talking about possible solutions, but sure, why don't you go ahead, and then we have Becky Chalet is also queued up. So why don't you keep going for a second, then we'll bring Becky in.
Sure. Just in I was hoping this would come up, and one reason why I don't think the parking meter question should go back on the ballot is because, and I questioned it from the beginning when a former town manager recommended that it was proposed to be funded through the lot funds, the local option tax, and therefore they had to be voter approved. The town does not need voter approval to decide to install parking meters and manage parking meters, but we needed voter approval. And what the voters did not approve of was spending the lot money on parking meters. Maybe ideologically, they were voting against having parking meters, but what the ballot language specified was, do you authorize the town to spend local option tax on a parking meter system? That's not verbatim, of course.
Great.
So anyway, I hope that we will get back to revisit the idea and it not be considered going against the will of the voters, because the will of the voters was to not spend local option tax on parking meter system. And
great.
We'll leave it at that. But those long-term parker, I have people that come in my shop saying, I tried to get a parking spot and there was a woman sitting in her car and she was just having her lunch break in her car. Anyway, those anecdotes I've got a million of them, but I'll leave it at that.
All right, good. We'll add eating lunch in car to our list of why people park downtown. Becky, you've had your hand up. CATV, can you bring Becky Chalet over?
Okay, am I on? Ooh, yes, I am.
Great.
Okay, so Becky Chalet, resident of Hartford. And I was just going to add, I think another reason why we park downtown is because we are all comfortable with and familiar with driving our own private vehicles everywhere, myself included. And I think that that downtown White River Junction does not lend itself to safe biking. So it makes it very hard for people to ride their bikes downtown. And I'm not so sure that the public transportation service is, I know that AT does a great job, but I just, it's not as, public transportation is not as robust as it could be to really help people to get out of their private vehicles and using public transportation or other alternative modes of transportation to get downtown. And that would obviously relieve some of the parking stress.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yep. Thanks, Becky. Great point. Okay. I don't see other hands up on this. This is only our first of four. Oh, there's a hand up maybe on the panel. Let me see here. Oh yeah. Tracy's got her hand up.
I go to downtown White River Junction because that's where that's where I get my hair cut.
Nice.
So I just want to give a shout out to the breadth of facilities that we have down there. Thanks for being down there, Scout Hair Design. And I have the privilege of being able to walk, both because I work at Town Hall and also because I can get around on my legs and walk over there. But I have to say, I have noticed that sometimes it's hard to find parking in the middle of the day, and that would be hard if I needed to park close by because I had a mobility need.
Great. Okay, good. Let's, why don't we wrap up that section? I'll turn it back over to the staff for a couple of talks about possible solutions, and then we're going to get back for comment on why parking is important, why we're providing it. So Tracy, why don't I send it back to you, and you can get the next part going.
Thanks, Chuck.
Lori, whichever you like.
Next up, we're going to hear from our planning and development staff. I think Matt Osborne is going to be taking the lead on this one for his presentation. And they've put out some interesting stuff I saw today, and they've got a couple of good graphs. So take it away, Matt.
Thank you, Madam Town Manager. I have a share screen here. Bear with me. So I need to be enabled to share my screen.
So Richard, can you allow Matt to share a screen, please?
All right. Can everyone see this? Can you see the screen? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, we can.
All right. So parking. A very interesting topic, and one that I've been very familiar with over the last 16 years. In the downtown, as we all know, there's a limited amount of municipal parking. Currently, there's a total of 330 spaces that exist. 149 of those are on street, and 181 are located in the 2 municipal lots, of which 147 spaces are in the South Main lot and 34 spaces are in the Village Square lot. After a long period of economic decline, downtown redevelopment really picked up in the early 2000s. In 2005, the Planning and Development Department initiated a parking survey program to track parking. Since then, parking surveys have taken place twice a year, one in the winter and one in the summer, and a fall survey was added in 2019. Surveys include 20 parking counts over a 2-week period, and a total of 640 parking counts have been made to date. Parking counts are taken 4 times a day, mid-morning, midday, noon hour, mid-afternoon, and evening. When a new project is proposed downtown, the Planning Commission closely reviews the projected parking impact for new projects. This has included the 231 South Main Street building, and currently River Roost will be coming through the development review process. And part of that review process includes an evaluation of a professional assessment of the parking demand for each project. So we do take a close look at parking each time a new project comes in. All right, a significant amount of new housing units and commercial space was added to the downtown following the 2009 revitalization plan and creation of the tax increment financing district. This was delayed somewhat by the 2008 recession, and we were all very pleased that redevelopment started happening in the early 2010s. And this led to a significant upward trend in the demand for public parking between 2015 and 2020. We saw dramatic increases in evening occupancy, steady increases in midday occupancy. We also saw at near full occupancy in the downtown core sections. We also saw steady increases in mid-morning and mid-afternoon periods. So we have here a graph that shows those increases over time. Basically, between 2005 and 2014, parking occupancy hovered around the 150 mark. That's basically 150 parked vehicles in about 340 municipal parking spaces downtown. So it was less than a 50% parking occupancy. As you can see, looking at the right-hand side of the graph, since 2015, we've seen a significant upward trend, exceeding 200 average occupancy for the last 6 parking surveys, starting in 2018. This shows the breakdown of on-street versus municipal lot occupancy, with a sizable increase in both over the last 5 years. And if you look for a considerable amount of that, the parking surveys, we had more on-street parking occupancy than we did in the 2 municipal parking lots. And as you can see, that has started to change, and we're seeing more vehicles parked in the 2 municipal lots. We introduced the parking survey in the fall of 2019 after it seemed intuitively that there were a lot of cars parked downtown. Previously, it was rare to have over 200 parked vehicles in municipal spaces downtown. The fall of 2019 resulted in 19 of 20 counts exceeding 200 parked vehicles, and the lowest count was almost 200 at 198. And then we had 10 of 20 counts exceeding 250 parked vehicles. 255 vehicles is a 77% occupancy. 275 is an 81% occupancy. So for the first time in a long time, we had a cushion. We had a significant amount of excess capacity of parking spaces. So the fall of 2019 parking survey kind of created, more demand for parking, and there was less availability. We didn't have that cushion that we've had in the past. Looking at a little deeper into the trends between 2015 and 2019, overall parking occupancy was up 53.4%. Mid-morning counts was up 43.2%. Midday counts 36.7%. Mid-afternoon counts 33.7%. Evening counts up a pretty dramatic 126%. As we're all well aware of the downtown restaurant scene has really changed in the last few years. And then we're seeing a higher occupancy in the South Main Street municipal lot, and that increased nearly 77%. So average occupancy doesn't always tell the entire story. You know, when we look just at percentages, it doesn't really translate into the available spaces. So looking at a couple of the fall 2019 and winter 2020 parking surveys for the Kolodny block of South Main Street just gives you an example. So for the Kolodny block in the fall of 2019, 73.8% occupancy results in only 3.4 actual available spaces. The barbershop block, 88%, it isn't even an entire space. So we're getting into fraction of spaces. The South Main Street lot has always been very important because, you know, 71% occupancy still provides almost 45 parking spaces. And then the Village Square lot, that has been used increasingly and has had higher parking occupancy, but a 90% occupancy results in only 3 available parking spaces. So the parking in the downtown core is very limited, and it's during all time periods. It used to be, it was primarily the midday parking counts where we had high occupancy in the core area, and that has changed in the last 5 years. We're seeing many more periods where the core area, the area down around Hotel Coolidge and around the other blocks surrounding there. I mean, it's hard to find a parking space many times. On Gate Street, on the around the corner from the Hotel Coolidge, that has been an area that's also seen considerable higher occupancy. So what does it mean? It means that people have to walk up to 5 minutes. We have a small downtown, but they're walking to the fringe areas of the downtown because there isn't parking available in the core for most of the time. So people are having to walk to the South Main Street lot, Gate Street beyond the Methodist Church, Church Street. I mean, these are the areas that are a little farther out on the fringe. Railroad Row in the courthouse, that there's parking available there in the evenings and on the weekends. And even sometimes the Bugby Senior Center is another option when they're not having an event in the evening or on the weekends. So that has been an area where people can find parking. But again, it's a little farther out in the fringe of the downtown area. Okay, we have the following are parking restrictions that we want people to be aware of. Parking downtown has limitations. On-street parking is limited to 2 hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Village Square lot has 2-hour and 4-hour spaces, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And there is no time limit in the South Main Street lot. There is also a winter parking ban in effect from December 1st to April 30th from 12:01 a.m. to 7 a.m. Okay, parking enforcement historically has been tire chalking in downtown White River Junction. However, a recent court case struck down that practice. We want to maximize the use of parking in high demand areas, in the core in particular, and encourage parking turnover so people can find parking spaces. Parking meters provide a method that elicits that and also allows self-enforcement from users. I was in Woodstock yesterday afternoon, and I parked and had a parking meter, and I filled it with some coins, and I knew how long I had to park. And I planned my stops to that, knowing that I had to be out of there by 4:10 or feed the meter. And parking meter technology also allows for quick and easy changes for special events and winter parking restrictions. So, you know, we have an opportunity going forward, and I think parking meters provide a lot of possibility of managing parking better in the downtown. So folks are not violating the 2-hour parking restriction, and so employees don't park, you know, in the core of the downtown and maybe go out a little further out to the South Main Street lot. So in conclusion, we need to continue to track parking and look for solutions to ensure that we have adequate parking opportunities downtown going forward. Thank you.
Very much, Matt. Go back to Chuck, I think.
Yes. Do we have questions or comments from participants about Matt's presentation? So a lot of good data there about who's parking where and when, and also how that's changed, especially in the last few years. If anybody has questions about that, we could entertain those now. And if not, we can continue on with Hannah's presentation. Oh, we do have a question here. Yes, Tim Ferriel, could CATV, can you bring Tim over? How are we doing? Any sign of Tim? Anybody's view? CATV, can we bring Tim over? We have a couple of folks here. How are we doing? Snack break. There we go. Tim, looks like you're on. Tim, can you hear me there? All right. The wonders of technology here. Tim, one more crack at it here, or else I can get you later. Oh, there you are. Yeah, Tim, go ahead. You're on. Tim, can you hear? You can go. Anybody else hear me? Wave a hand. Okay, good. All right, Tim, we have to get you unmuted, and I can't. I'll try to get back around to you. So see if there's something on your end that you can do to reconnect there. Can we bring Mike Morris over? Okay. How to make a short meeting into a long one.
So Rich, at CTV, maybe we should bring over Mike and Lanny at the same time. We'll call them in that order, and that way they'll be here and ready
Great.
When we get there. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. We'll take anybody at this point. CATV, how you guys doing? We bring over Mike, Lenny, or Tim?
Yeah, hang on a second, Chuck. It's doing something we haven't seen before.
Okay, great. No worries.
We're working it.
Good to know you're on it. Tracy, maybe it makes sense. Do we try to, since we have Hannah with us, do we want to continue on here while we work through the bugs?
Now it's me. It looks like we just moved CATV. Oh, there we go. Mike, can you hear us?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah. Mike, you're on, man.
Hey, Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Thank you, everybody. As you know, I've been following the parking situation for a long, long time. In the parking meter process and where it's proposed, but I really hope that in the future we do have parking meters. I've seen how it's helped out Woodstock. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've had to frequent Woodstock on many occasions to the courthouse. And I found it very concerning to make sure I had change every time I drove up there, because I'd have to go up there and just drop off a piece of paper, and I'd have to buy a half hour, an hour's worth of time on the meter. I would hope that if we do go forward with meters, which I think would be helpful, we do something that's welcoming to people, that they get the first 15 minutes free. For little short visits like what I was doing up in Woodstock, that would have been convenient, helpful, and quicker for me. I would have been in and out quicker as opposed to putting money in the meter and everything. But secondly, there's a lot of businesses that are catering curbside service, and for someone to have to stop and put 50 cents in the meter to walk up the curbside to get their meal to go and then get back in seems a little crazy. So I just want to suggest that we have that little free welcoming spell for people on meters when they first come into town for that short, quick visit, or just 15 minutes to walk around. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mike. Comment noted. Lenny Collins, I think you're over, Lenny.
Thank you, Chuck. Yes, I guess it'd be, I don't know whether you will classify it as a lesson learned or not, but back when we had a bustling downtown, when there used to be plenty of merchants down there and we had everything happening, there was plenty of spaces. What I think is happening now is that with the development of the downtown area into a residential area, we've definitely grown the number of long-term spaces that people are occupying. My question arises in that during all the planning and development that's taken place for revitalizing the downtown area, has there ever been anything noted for how many spaces each development needs when they develop a new piece of property? And that would be something that we should be taking into account to put into some sort of a fee for these folks to have this many spaces, so we can put a pot of money aside for this exact problem that we're facing. I have to believe that we have so many spaces downtown that are occupied that there's nobody that's no business or no residential area that's taking responsibility for those spaces, and they're just being sucked up. So I'm not sure, as I said, from a planning and development state, if there's been any thought process about that or not.
Great, Lanny, good question. Seems like we're informal enough here. We can have a little back and forth. I don't know if Lori, if you want to speak to that, or Matt, how planning is sort of allocating parking based on new development.
So yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. There's a couple of different things. We have specific requirements of how many parking spaces that you need for so many square feet of commercial or retail business, as well as having the number of seats of the restaurant that you have and number of units that you have. So, and in the downtown, we also have the flexibility, as we do in other areas, but a little bit more here, is to look at whether or not some of those requirements can be reduced, because we do have access to public transit in some areas. We do have a lot of smaller contained multifamily units, which may not require to, for example, with residents of having 2 cars per dwelling unit as a requirement. And we also, kind of look at the big picture in terms of overlap of uses. So if somebody's coming in to go to the theater, they may also be going over to a restaurant. So that would be 1 vehicle counted instead of 2 separate vehicles. So we do look at all of that. And we actually, as we have been focusing on the parking and seeing the higher demands, we on a regular basis, and I think it was noted in Matt's presentation, is that we do look at the impact of traffic and the parking impact. And now we're having professionals provide the information on that as part of the applicant's submittal to us, so that we can look at that in a scientific way, as opposed to just, kind of, oh, well, that's what it feels like us to be. Is that an issue? Is it not an issue? We're really trying to look at it in a very systematic way.
Great.
In terms of the cost associated with that, that is something that other municipalities, when I was working in the Washington, D.C. area, that was a strategy that was used. In terms of if you're asking for providing them in a public sector, as opposed to it being a portion of it being in public and a portion of it being on the private sector property to meet those parking requirements, is there some financial contribution that the individual should make towards a fund that can help accommodate the public parking responsibilities? But we do look at it, all of that. 132 was a recent large project where it became, well, you have a lot of residential going on here, so you really need to include that residential on site. Do you need to do 2 or can it be 1 per residential unit? And then a little bit of the commercial space then went into the general public parking area. But we are very cognizant of that, but I have seen that employed in other communities, not necessarily in Vermont, as much as I might see that in other states. So.
All right, great. And I assume, Lanny, too, you could get some of those specific numbers from the staff if you wanted to at some point as well.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yep. Tim, are you with us in any capacity? We can see your squares. I'm not sure if you have a line of sight there to the town hall, but the internet might not be so good.
Chuck, the chat is disabled, so he cannot put a message in the chat.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Maybe CATV folks heard that. While we're working on that, Hannah, you've had your hand up. You want to speak to this, or do you want to wait for your next session?
Sure, it's maybe a little bit out of order, but I wanted to take an opportunity to respond to Mike's comments about the parking meters. And one of the great opportunities that we have with kind of like modern technology and parking meters is that we can create a really dynamic parking system, and we can customize it spot by spot by spot. I was fortunate to have the opportunity when I was in Brattleboro, when we were looking at all of our parking spaces, to really look at how those spaces were used in front of each business. So for example, in front of the library, we designated 2 spots that were 15-minute free parking. And it was, the intent was that for anybody who just needs to literally run in and drop off or pick up their books, they can do that at no charge. Or there was more inexpensive parking in front of the post office at much smaller increments. So people could, same thing, run in, run out for, whether it was free or a nominal amount of money. And also, you don't have to have change. All of the new parking meter systems have apps associated with them, and most take credit cards. So I don't want to pigeonhole us into this idea that we're, sticking change in the meter and we have the same amount of money we have to pay no matter what the spot is. I think it's up to the town to create a really dynamic and useful parking system that really benefits everybody who uses our entire downtown.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. I think I don't see any other hands up. And so if you wanted to continue ahead, you could take it away on your next section here.
All right, CATV, want to give me some screen share? All right. All right, does everybody see me? Okay. So this is just kind of revisiting the parking presentation that we did in 2020. And the goal of this presentation when we did it was really to revisit the parking study that was done by Vital Communities in 2017 and look at some of the ideas that they had and some of the bigger parcels that they looked at for parking. and how that might work for us. And one of the things that I just really want to put out there, I will be taking great notes tonight. If there are questions that I can't answer, I can assure everybody that we'll make sure that we follow up in, a kind of a post press release or however we end up doing that. But if there's something I can't answer tonight, I just want to make sure everybody knows we will follow up with you. And so just kind of going back to that background, I've updated a few slides on here that I thought would be more effective, with current information. So the South Main Street lot is kind of a hot topic. We know that this is one of our, this is one of the town's biggest municipally owned parking lots. We own it, we control it, and we maintain it. And the lot geometry and topography are really well suited for parking. As many of you know, this project or this parking lot is currently under design to make improvements not only to parking capacity, but safety, stormwater improvements, traffic flow, all kinds of great things happening there. We're hopeful and crossing our fingers that we can get this to construction for 2022. Right now, we're really looking at ways that we can minimize the cost, because to get those 50 additional parking spaces, we have to go into the bank that's on the south side of that parking lot in this area back here. And so we're really trying to find a way to balance how much we bring the parking lot up, and instead of a big retaining wall. It's quite a bit more expensive. So this was an original engineer's estimate for magnitude of cost to do the improvements that we're talking about. As of 2020, it was about a $1.8 million project. We're cautiously optimistic that we can maintain something close to that, but ultimately, we're looking at a substantial investment into our parking system for that project. One of the lots that was referenced in the 2017 parking study, and we do referenced a lot from our public, is the Home Comfort Warehouse lot. And this lot comes with kind of a significant number of complicators. And you can see here the blue section is the White River, and the red zone is our riparian buffers. This area right here is the urban bridge. So as you can see from the bullet points, this is located in the floodway, the floodplains. Some of those are federally designated, so it creates a whole new level of permitting that we would have to address if we were to put parking there. The town, public works, planning, police have concerns about the access issues off of Bridge Street. That's already kind of a taxed area in terms of turning movements and traffic. So we have concerns over, how we would make that very safe. The lot is currently privately owned. It is a former hazardous waste generation site. It is bumping up against the VTrans access and easements for the urban bridge. The primary outfall for what we consider the north end of town drainage runs under that parcel. And, it's really hard to estimate the number of net parking spaces that we would be able to gain. We do have an update about this topic. Recently, we have done a low-cost evaluation by an engineering consultant who essentially is able to go through all of the check marks for environmental permitting. And their preliminary evaluation, which is draft at this time, is that it's very likely that this parcel would be unpermittable at the state and federal level for parking spaces. Another lot that's referenced regularly in our parking study is what we refer to as the Y lot. This is kind of adjacent. It's between the courthouse and the railroad in the Nut Lane neighborhood. And this lot also comes with its own set of unique and interesting complications. Again, there's access issues and the inconvenience of being located across rail lines. And it is currently state and railway owned. And anybody who's worked with the railway, I can assure you that those negotiations and conversations are usually very slow and very difficult. Again, this is a potential hazardous waste site. My understanding is that we have had previous negotiations with the railroad or entered into them, and they were relatively unsuccessful. It would require some significant street and pedestrian access improvements in addition to just making it a parking lot. Again, it's a very remote location and there are security concerns. It's kind of a, it's a little bit of a walk from downtown. There's not a lot of lighting. So, that's something that we hear about a lot, is improving safety and walkability in our downtown. Some more lots that are kind of checked off the possibility list. There's a lot behind Elixir and Vermont Salvage. That lot really is, it's not only privately owned, but those spaces are tied to existing and approved developments with long-term leases. And again, another lot, across from the former Legion. As many of us know, in our downtown, we have a brand spanking new business building down there in the 132 South Main. So that's really off the chart for being able to be used for parking. The parking study does reference the Consolidated Communications and St. Anthony Church lot. This really is, it's all privately owned. So, and it is meeting their needs, both, with all of the adjacent businesses and residences there. So that would require kind of some significant negotiations to enter into any public parking agreements there. So some things just to consider is that as we, do the improvements in our downtown, that are bringing our streets and parking areas into current compliance with, traffic standards and stormwater and ADA standards. Ultimately, we're going to be losing some on-street parking usage. And although we don't believe we're losing any formal parking spaces, there are many spaces that people use that, the town would likely consider illegal spaces, just using up all those little spaces you can. One of the discussions, a little bit of concern that implementation of parking meters may shift the on-street usage to off-street usage. And so we should consider, as we move forward with parking meters, that we need to have a comprehensive system that includes our parking lots as well. So this is a quick plan for the town square parking lot. Just a quick overview. These are the improvements that we are projecting to make across from the Coolidge Hotel and that area. And we're optimistic that we can include this in the phase 2 of the South Main Street parking lot. So this was included in the March 2020 TIF bond consideration. It really addresses some walkability, again, the drainage, parking layout, lighting, landscaping, accessibility issues. This parking lot improvement does not include an increase in public parking spaces. And that's it.
Great. Maybe Hannah, do you want to unshare the screen here?
Sorry about that.
Great. And we'll take some questions. Joe, you've got your actual hand up.
Yes. Hannah, were they more specific about the home comfort lot and specifically why they felt it was unpermittable?
So hopefully I'll be able to share the full report shortly. It is currently in its draft phase, but I mean, ultimately, it is in the floodplain and floodway, which are two different things, believe it or not. It's in an area that they believe would be in a designated wetland and critical wildlife habitats. So ultimately it's primarily due to environmental reasons that this lot would be a no-go for permitting at both the state and federal level.
Great. Dennis, another physical hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Yeah, on that home comfort warehouse, can everybody hear me? Okay. For some reason, my audio turned off. Anyways, I'm still puzzled about the home comfort thing. And I know when we visited this before, there was a lot of negative and no positives about it. I can see lots of positives that we haven't mentioned, is just the close proximity to so many businesses. And I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around this permitting thing. We're not building structures down there. I could see in a floodplain why you wouldn't be allowed to have a structure. I mean, we did the Quechee Falls Park. We were able to do that, not building any structures, but it was in a floodplain. I don't know about riparian buffer, but anyways, that was able to happen. And so I guess that's all I want to say about that. But I'm pretty excited about the location of that spot anyways. I should note that all the truck traffic that used to be in and out of there, for those that don't know, the fire department was in the museum building, and Sanborn Oil in my younger days was there with tractor trailers going in and out of there, and they made it work. It may have not been pristine and ideal, but they made it work with heavy trucks going in and out of there. At the building to the left of where the fire department used to be was Gateway, Vermont Gateway, I think back then, but Gateway Motors, Ford dealer. And so they had car carriers and again, cars and trucks and so forth there. So anyways, they made it work back then. And as far as the home comfort thing again, if it seems like a fairly simple thing, unless we added further down towards the urban bridge, we could just line the parking lot that's already there and just have parking and gain quite a few spaces if we were to acquire that. So I'm still hoping that we can research further, and I understand there's a further report coming, and so stay tuned, I guess, and we'll learn more. It's a listening session, and I'm already doing too much talking. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dennis. Hannah, do you want to speak to Dennis's questions?
So ultimately, when anybody does developments of that scale, we are obligated to go by state and federal and also municipal standards. And if Lori wants to comment a little bit on the zoning standards, maybe she can chime in. But we are obligated to abide by those. So even though sometimes they don't seem like they make a lot of sense, we do have to check all those boxes, especially if we're using any funding sources that are federal or state funding to supplement those projects. So sometimes even when something seems like it should be a slam dunk for us, it's, we're not always able to do that. And the engineering consultant who we contracted with to take a preliminary look at that, I do have the utmost faith in in their evaluation of the site to recognize all of those concerns for that lot.
Okay, great. I know we could get farther into this. We do have a question from the public here. Someone named Iris. Iris, let's bring you over and you can take your mute off and ask the question or speak to this aspect. Go ahead.
Okay, so I live in Wilder, and I just have a question about the improvement that's planned for the parking lot across from the Coolidge. I guess is that the municipal parking lot? I'm not sure what it's called. Will that have any impact on the gardens that are along the fence close to the railroad tracks?
Who wants to take that one? Tracy, do you know
You
that?
want me to chime in on that one?
Great.
Yeah, I'm probably the most familiar with that. Actually, it will, because one of the things that we're doing within that plan, and if somebody, I don't know, Hannah, if you want to bring it back up, or we can just talk very quickly on it. The whole concept is actually bringing back, it's called the Town Square parking lot. And the whole concept is to bring back the green space and putting it closer to the street so that it's part of the new streetscape. And in addition to that, it'll give us some opportunity to really rethink that, you know, how do we bring that sense of green? How do we bring that sense of sitting on a park bench or whatever? So we would shift it, but it's still going to be an important part of the downtown. So you can see here that we're really focusing a lot of the parking in the back part. We're taking the parking that's perpendicular on Main Street and flipping that into the park, excuse me, flipping that into the parking area directly. Many of you have been walking a dirt footpath along that area for quite a while, so that's going to be a standard sidewalk there. We will be putting parallel parking here along there. And again, looking to see how we can manage this with green, with trees, with an area that will be function very well for, like, for example, our First Fridays when we have music in this area. And so I hope that answers your question. Iris, was there something in particular you were concerned about the park? And by the way, that park was created in memory of David Briggs' father, and he was an integral part in designing this with many other community members when we first conceived of this about 5-6 years ago.
Okay, great. We've got a couple of more general topics to get to, so let's take those up right now for folks, attendees who are here. So questions in particular, how can parking impact downtown businesses? Because of course we've touched on that a little bit. And then in a general sense, why is parking important to have in a community? So some of these, we've already touched on some of these items and people have mentioned some of these items already, but I want to make sure we sort of get in a general sense. Does anybody want to speak to the importance of parking in general or to businesses? I don't see any hands going up. I think you were kind of jumping around, but I think we're covering the waterfront here generally. Any questions about any of that? Looks like people are understanding where we are so far. So I guess then why don't we continue on then, Tracy? I know you've got some discussion about what some other towns are doing, which might be helpful.
Yeah, before we let Hannah and Lori turn off their cameras for a little while and take some water, anything else for these two amazing people that do very complex jobs every single day? Just thank you, Hannah and Lori, for everything you do.
It looks like Kim, you've got a physical hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I've got a couple questions relating to kind of the last two presentations from both Matt and Hannah, but I guess quickly relating to the home comfort warehouse lot. Is the unpermittable apply as well if say that private property owner wanted to rent parking spaces to various downtown businesses for their employees or something? Do you think that would be prohibited as well? Or is it just the municipal operation of it?
So they actually already do. They've engaged with several of the businesses around town. I think it's primarily, and this is my kind of colloquial understanding, they've engaged with a couple of businesses on Railroad Row and lease spaces to them. What would be unpermittable is the act of making a significant improvement to the lot to meet like stormwater and lighting standards and impermeable surfaces. That's where you start to run into something being unpermittable.
Okay, but so just sort of on an informal level, I mean, they're still, I'm sure, paying taxes on the income they get from that, but as far as our involvement, because I do think that, and maybe I should wait till later to, I'll go back to another very specific question about the presentations and do my more general observations later. But Hannah, with the South Main Street lot changes and updates, do you know, is there any change in the plan of the traffic flow in terms of that we talked about at a meeting or two ago, where it's, you can go in 2 or 3 ways, but you can only get out 1 way? Do you know if any of that is being explored or examined?
So the current configuration is the result of negotiations for an easement to finish the Courier Street project and was approved by the past town manager's office. I'm not aware that we're considering changing that at this time.
But if there were an easement, like if you say that, am I understanding correctly that the reason it is limited in its flow is because there's an easement that has not been granted?
The easement has been granted contingent on the one-way flow.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'd love to learn more about that at another time, maybe, but okay. And then can I, one more specific question? It was pointed out to me recently that we've added whether they're temporary or permanent curbside pickup spots, which I realize may not be necessary if at some point we get to meters, but I'm sure it'll be a while before there are actual meters on the sidewalk. And it was pointed out to me that each of the North Main Street eateries has 2 curbside pickup spots. So basically it's taking up approximately like 30 or 40% of the parking spaces on this segment of street. And they were asking if I thought that was reasonable. And I was like, well, I'd ask about it. I would imagine one curbside parking per restaurant would seem sufficient to me, but any just thoughts about why it was decided that they both needed 2?
Yeah, that was at the direction of the previous town manager's office, and we do have some on Courier Street. And at the time, we did quite a bit of, I think we did outreach to the businesses, and those were the only businesses who responded at that time.
Wait, there's some on Courier Street too?
Sorry, not Courier, Gates.
Gates, yeah, Gates. Okay, anyway, just I'm making that observation that, I mean, I realize that like the extended outdoor dining is really only benefiting 2 of the downtown businesses, not all of them. And I think I've mentioned before the disappointment in one of our minority run businesses who has not benefited from any of the Federal CARES Act money in terms of his revenue losses. And I don't ever want to like do anything to make anything harder for them, but I just want to be conscious of the fact that anyway, I think there's a better use. I think 1 curbside parking per business is sufficient, and so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, great.
And you know, Kim, I have to do some research because that was before my time. So I definitely want to look into and maybe check in with the rest of my staff who were here to say, like, what was the reasoning? You know, is there something that we can bring forth that we can say, hey, we're coming out of COVID. Is there a way to get a little bit more work? And also, like, those are curbside pickup spots, but they're regular parking spots. So if you need them.
Okay. Dennis, maybe one more question here, then I want to go to the, we have a question from the community. So go ahead and
Thank you,
wrap
sir.
this.
To Hannah, the last thing I'd just ask about the home comfort thing. When we say unpermittable, is it absolutely not possible to do this, or could it be with some waivers or something on that nature, or is it just absolutely impossible, never can happen? If that's the case, I'll stop bothering about it. But if there is a way, a workaround or some such thing, then I would continue to be interested in that. Thank you.
Well, I would say it probably puts me in a difficult position to comment on that. There's always a workaround, but I would say that if the goal was for the town to take ownership of that lot and turn it into what we would consider a parking lot that had the town's good housekeeping stamp of approval on it, that is likely a no-go from state and federal permitting. If the town was interested in negotiating with the current property owner or looking for workarounds, that would probably put the town at some disadvantages to be investing or leasing parking spaces that really didn't meet the town standards or state standards that maybe even the Vermont League of Cities and Towns wouldn't support. But I guess, there's
Okay, great. Thanks, Hannah. We've got a question from someone in the community, Eric Krause. Eric, we're going to move you over here. And if you want to unmute, you've got the floor.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks, Eric.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone, for entertaining this conversation. Since Hannah's presentation touched at least in part on capacity, I guess I want to ask the question, will an increase in parking capacity downtown likely increase automobile traffic to the downtown area? And then tied to that question would be, will an increase in auto traffic downtown increase demand? In other words, are we creating a situation where there's a continual positive feedback loop? Again, the key phrase being positive feedback loop. So this is a question of capacity and scalability. And it's one that I'm sure that traffic engineers and the like struggle with, have for time immemorial. And in the same vein of thinking, I wanted to ask about the status of the town plan, specifically Chapter 4, which is housing, and Chapter 5, which is economic development. The 2019 town plan summary of changes dated April 1, 2019 states that neither chapter was updated, and for both chapters it states, quote, "The chapter will undergo a major update within the next 2 years," end quote. Is there a plan to update these chapters so that the town has a more complete picture of housing and economic development, including that which relates to downtown White River Junction, before pursuing specific solutions that might, in the bigger, longer term picture, prove to be suboptimal?
Great, Eric. A couple good sort of interrelated questions. Lori, do you want to at least take a crack at the timing of plan updates? And
Sure, that's what I thought I could address for you. Unfortunately, we had COVID that came in between our planning time to focus on that. So it is something that this summer and fall, we're going to be putting together a schedule. We've been talking with the Planning Commission about the updates for these two sections. And we're going to be putting together a schedule and then get that out. I can't tell you exactly what that's going to be, but it is something we want to get back on track with and then start some community engagement on those issues. And certainly the issue of how do we meet the increase of economic development and housing in the town of Hartford, because I think we want to do that in all different parts, just not in the downtown, but also in other parts. And how will we generate more traffic? One of the things that we've tried to do, particularly in the recent large projects in the downtown, is to look more creatively about how can we meet that economic and housing need with minimizing the impact on the increased traffic. So looking again at if you're going to have somebody's going to go to a restaurant and go to the theater, we don't really need to build 2 parking spaces. We only need to build 1 parking space for that trip. And what can we do to encourage people to leave their cars home and carpool? What can we do to encourage people to walk more? We are trying to engage more in those transportation demand management strategies.
Great. I think, Eric, that sort of covered a little bit of your positive feedback loop. We can get to that in our last topic here, which is going to be looking at sort of going forward. So let's see, I think I've got that. There might be a question, another panelist question. We had Lori. Okay, great. Okay. Awesome. I think we've covered that section. I think, Tracy, now we're over to you. So why don't you take it away to talk about other towns, other options?
Yeah, CATV, could I have share screen, please? It's giving me advanced sharing options, but it's not letting me. There we go. Is it just black? Oh, there we go. All right, everyone. Some of the things that I've been taking away from those of you that I've talked to from my own time driving and parking in downtown White River Junction, walking in downtown White River Junction. And if you've ever just seen me standing on the corner staring, I'm trying to think about what all of these things are that have been brought to my attention in the last 3.5 months. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is some of the things that other towns have done. We're not alone in balancing all of these conflicting priorities of trying to think about the future, of being present in the present, and making sure that we are aware of all of the different equity concerns that we have when we put parking constraints in place. There we go. So can you still see that? My screen just changed. Okay, so some of the things that, the 4 top things that I carry with me every day is that Hartford has a growing downtown, and we want residents and visitors to come to our downtown, but we have limited downtown parking. And we also have a downtown that has geographical constraints that restrict growth in some ways. We've got a railroad and we've got 2 different rivers. That's not new. I often remind myself of different places that have more geographic constraints than we do, but we can't just keep spreading out like we see some of our other friends and neighbors on both sides of this river. I wanted to talk about Hanover for a quick minute. Hanover has had downtown parking meters for quite some time. I couldn't dig out exactly when they started, so some of my staff said at least 10 years they remember putting a quarter in the slot. Their parking meters are Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. So if you go to Hanover on Sundays or in the evenings, it is free to park. And the parking meters have a 2 to 3 hour limit. And that seems to me like a good set of time to go get a restaurant meal, maybe do a little shopping, or if any of us remember what it was like to go to the movies, and then maybe grab an ice cream cone. And they also have a small parking garage a little bit farther away from the main road. Like Hannah was talking about, they have those smart parking meters, so they can, I hate to use the word manipulate, but they can manipulate how fast they move people in and out of their downtown by both changing how much it costs you to park closer to the action, making it cheaper farther away from the action lets us each evaluate what we'd like to get out of that process. Sometimes I'm willing to walk a little farther. Sometimes I have a cranky little kid with me and I'm willing to pay a little bit more to get closer to our brunch spot. They also allow them to change parking pricing based on when the students are coming back into town, when they have event festivals and things like that. One of the things I noticed when doing this work is that in some municipalities, when they really get this going, they're able to actually not only pay for the cost of the meters, but generate additional revenue. One of the examples I found was Nevada City, California, which is a small gold rush town in the Sierras. And they were able to, by using smart meters, not only pay for the meters and the enforcement staff, but they brought in a significant amount of money into their town, which allowed them to pay for additional services for kids and people who had additional needs. So they were able to bolster their Parks and Rec department, bolster their elder services. I'm not saying that that's a gimme, but I thought it was a really interesting opportunity. The next place I went was Winooski. They also have smart parking meters. But one of the things I found interesting about Winooski that I wanted to highlight is they have a residential parking permit. It is outside of their meter area, but it's designated areas where residents and small business owners can park for longer than that 2 to 3 hours. So for example, one of our small business owners that is in the downtown area could submit a form, get a designated number of permits for a small fee, get their sticker, and be able to park outside of the meter area, but still relatively close to their place of business or where they need the parking for longer. And that way they aren't possibly taking up meter spaces and or having to trek far afield in nights and weekends in an inclement weather. Winooski limits the number of stickers each address can have, so everybody gets assigned a small number. When I was looking around, it looked like it depended between 1 and 3 to 4, depending on how many employees the people had and how big of the space they took up in the downtown area. The next place I looked is Brattleboro. Don't be scared of their parking garage. It's a really big parking garage, but not, we're not even talking about design. We're just talking about concept. Brattleboro has the smart parking meters, and they have pay and display lots and a parking garage. This allows people to go to a kiosk, put in your card or cash or whatever kind of form of payment you want. Within reason, say how long you're going to stay. Again, the city puts constraints on that. It prints out a little ticket and you walk on back to your car and put that in your front driver's windshield. That means that you can, as a town, they offer short and long-term parking. So they're able to say, hey, if you want to park in the garage or in the lot for a long weekend, take the train. Take the airport shuttle, you can use our facility and we will charge you accordingly. The lots in the garage in Brattleboro also offer parking permits for area residents or business owners, and that you too can get those little stickers, those cling stickers like you get at the oil changer place, and be able to pay a small fee and have that be accounted for both internally, so we could know how many parking permits we have assigned to an area, how many spaces we can anticipate we'll need to hold back. But it also allows us to connect with residents and business owners and work in those costs and those needs. I just totally lost track about which. I wanted to do a Zoom poll. I have to admit, I got a little stuck on technology this afternoon, but I wanted to just open that up and really hear from everyone some of these options that our neighbors have, both parking meters, parking permits for residents and small business owners, and then what it seems like most of the best practices call pay and display, which means you get that little piece of paper that says that you have paid for your parking through 9 p.m., 2 p.m., whatever that time is for you all. So a little short and sweet, but I'm mostly excited to hear from all of you what your concerns and thoughts are.
Okay, fantastic. So I think we are at an opportunity here to respond to Tracy's questions and her opportunities from other towns, what people are doing. And also this is a chance here to talk about comments of a more general nature. I know, Kim, you had some others had some as well. So we're going to talk about both short-term, what can we do in the next few years to make better use of the parking that we have, but also general comments that people have based on the information we've received tonight. So happy to take questions or comments from Kim. Why don't we start with you?
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Chuck. A consideration that, like, I really like this idea of in part reconsidering the minimum parking requirements through the planning and zoning process. And I think in tandem with that, I've been talking for a couple of years about the idea of reinstating impact fees for developments. And I know it's not that popular of an idea, but one thing that where I think it could intersect here is if a new development is coming through, and having sat as liaison through the Planning Commission and Design Review Board, everything, like, it just keeps coming up. I mean, basically, since a few major developments where there were exceptions made and parking was not, the parking exemptions were made from the minimum requirements, it then comes down to every single business that's applying for their permit process to say, you know, well, how come we have to come up with this number of parking spots if that project did not, et cetera. So anyway, it's a problem. And I feel like every time I watch the business owner or developer taking on the burden of having to provide a service that we as a town basically have taken responsibility for by making exceptions to those original projects. I hope I'm not being too tangential. Anyway, I want to think about impact fees for developers in a way that are incentivized, so that if it is residential or commercial and it's including underground parking, I mean, that we practically pay them to make that development, and or if it's more energy efficient or affordability or just accessible, like that there can be sort of, if you're going to just put up a basic like stick box building and call it a thing, then fine, we're not going to say no, but it's going to cost, you're going to have to pay for the services that the town is going to provide for you. But if you are going to develop something that is really adds benefit and gain for the town, then those incentives come in, and ultimately, you know, for example, I keep thinking about some sort of public-private development that someone's going to come in and do, not just a parking garage, but a mixed-use, a movie theater with apartments and parking and a coffee shop or whatever, that is not like a magnet for dark, crimey kind of activity, but that is actually like a vibrant development that happens to include a bunch more parking for the town. I definitely, I think in terms of, like I can see also like that there are residential, I mean, we are so in need of workforce housing, of affordable housing, that there could be developments that are like, look, this does not include parking. This does not include any parking. And that is a decision for those residents to decide if that's a good fit for them or not. Like if they have to have a car and they're gonna have to figure out where to put it every night. Anyway, I think I'm getting a little too far along. I think I'll leave it at that, where I'm interested in re-examining the parking minimum requirements and impact fees on with incentives. So I'll just stop there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kim. I'm mindful of the opportunity here for members of the public to comment and ask questions. I don't see any hands up at the moment, so I'm happy to continue to have staff respond. And actually, I see a hand now from Dennis. But if you're an attendee and you have a comment that you wish to make, I will look for you to try to pull you in, especially if you want to respond to some of Tracy's questions about what some of our other neighbors are doing and how those strike you. So we're waiting for you to engage. So, but meantime, Dennis, you've got a question, so take it away.
Well, thank you. No question. I was on the board when we did away with impact fees, and I struggled with that question to this day. When we looked at that, the main reason that we did away with them at the time was that at least the previous town manager felt that we were nickel and diming our merchants trying to come in and discouraging them with what would turn into a one-time expense for them, possibly discouraging them when, if they did land here, we'd have their tax revenue for eternity, possibly. And so I still struggle with that. I'm glad Kim brought it up, but I'm always wanting to learn more about it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. I'll make one comment here while we're waiting for others to jump in, which is in the case of the Hanover parking garage, to Kim, to your point about the public-private, I think that was built, like, I think Dartmouth paid for about a third of it and has a third of the lots, and the town paid for 2/3 and has 2/3, something like that. So it was that same kind of example that you're talking about of that made that one possible for them. Okay, good. We do have a comment or question. If CATV, if you can move Eric back over, and then Eric, you'll have the floor. Can you get Eric slid over? We're working on it. Any, while we're waiting for Eric to come over, any board members or staff wish to make a comment? Or yes, Allie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks, Tracy, for giving the breakdown of different what different municipalities have been doing. And I think the parking meter conversation is, we've maybe exhausted that for the moment or have other things to think about. But something that I'm kind of struck by is like how to find the balance of, if we were to do something like that, how to reinvest those funds in our community, for particularly for folks who going downtown isn't as accessible. So Tracy, like you mentioned, mobility maybe being an issue, and that's why parking and having specific access to parking spaces is really important. And also, you know, I do think the reality is there are some folks who maybe couldn't afford parking if it was metered. And so just how, as we continue this conversation, we're thinking about how that, if there is a parking meter structure, that those funds are invested in the community in a way that is supporting folks who historically haven't been able to access downtown, their ability to do that. And that's why I'm also, you know, really interested in, Joe, I think you're working on the shuttle idea to, which I think also, you know, is more environmentally sustainable, makes sense for parking, allows more folks to access downtown. So how we're thinking about some of those solutions as well.
Great. Okay, Eric, I think we have you over here. If you're with us, go ahead.
You do have me. Thank you, Chuck.
Great.
So I guess first, maybe I'll respond to the brief poll that Tracy had on her last slide. My initial response to that, my immediate reaction is that I think all actions that improve the management of parking spaces are good. So meters, for example, that manage the flow and the usage of spaces is a good thing. In other words, let's use the spaces that we have efficiently and effectively. In terms of increasing capacity, my initial gut reaction to that is that's the wrong direction to go for many reasons. It runs counter to many other strategic goals that we have already defined. For example, if you look at the town plan, 2019 town plan, chapter 10, transportation section has goals around reducing vehicle miles traveled by 20%, 20% reduction at least by 2030. Additionally, there's a strategic goal in that same section about maintaining single occupancy vehicle trips to 2011 levels. So things that we do that make it easier for people to go downtown means that more people will go downtown and use their vehicles individually. So, I just heard Allie mention something about a shuttle, which I think came up in the October 2019 discussion as well, maybe around specific events. And I think those kind of solutions are important to look at and should be part of the overall picture. Also, by focusing on parking, we're making some certain assumptions. One of those assumptions might be auto-centric mobility. And I know that we're in rural Vermont and we need automobiles to get around most of the time, but we need to start to shift that paradigm. So in other words, let's not do more of the same thing that is failing us. And the other question that comes up, and this came up during the October 2019 discussion as well, was vehicles as the ownership model versus a service model. This is something that Alan Johnson spoke about at length, and essentially not owning a vehicle, but using an app on your phone to retrieve a vehicle to move you, whether it be with a human Uber or Lyft driver, or whether at some point in the future it's an automated vehicle that's moving you around. And so that when we explore some of those models, you have to wonder whether that demand will exist. And that's why I think that understanding the bigger picture, in other words, the town plan chapters that are mentioned before on housing and economic development, and sort of fleshing out sort of this longer term picture of not only that, but transportation in general is important. So I think I mentioned this back in 2019, but I'll mention it again, which is reframing the problem perhaps is the first good step. And rather than talking about parking, I would say that we reframe the problem as one of individuals accessing and traveling to and from their homes downtown, or their downtown jobs, or to merchants or social engagements. And I'm sure there's a more succinct way of saying that, but basically it's about access and mobility, and not focusing on vehicles. And if we focus on vehicles, then we're always going to be auto-centric, and we're always going to be dealing with the same sorts of problems, I think. So I don't think we can immediately and rapidly change anything, but and we may need short-term increases in capacity to alleviate the stress. But I think we really need to look longer term, and how reframing the problem can help can help achieve other strategic goals that we have. For example, like the ones I mentioned on energy and different streetscapes, with more greenery on them, with less automobile. It will be interesting. Montpelier did this. It'd be interesting to see what this is for downtown White River. A surface parking overlay map that shows you in red where all of the surface parking is, and then you get a sense of how much of downtown is consumed by vehicles and how much of it is left for people. I still go back to the Church Street Marketplace idea of why isn't a good portion of downtown White River like that? It's in terms of square footage, parking cars isn't going to do much for the grand list. On the other hand, buildings is going to do things for the grand list if that's what your focus is, or at least one of your focuses. And then also, if you have a Church Street type marketplace, you have all sorts of other opportunities for street vendors and just a whole array of other sort of rich social and economic life that can happen without cars or with cars around the perimeter. And so those are some of the things that pop into my mind. And sorry, I was going to make that a succinct, short answer to Tracy's 3 questions, but I have failed. And lastly, can I just say on Kim's comment about the impact fees, wow, 2 thumbs up. Yes, make the fees high and then discount them for the activities and behaviors and directions and solutions that developers provide that are in concert with our other strategic goals.
Great, thanks, Eric. Great set of comments there. While we give other potential attendees a chance to weigh in, anybody else from the board want to make a comment? Yes, Kim.
Just 2 more things. Sorry, I do talk a lot. But just to follow up with Dennis and impact fees, I do think it was reasonable at that time to inspire growth to remove those impact fees. And now I think that we're at a point where now we need to be like a little bit more selective, or I'm sure we should have been selective all along, but at a point where we've had a substantial amount of growth and now it's time to sort of just like be extra conscientious about the kind of development that happens in Hartford. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, because maybe this could be a town sponsored thing, but for several years, I was part of a group, we had a community car in White River, and it went for you paid like $50 a year and you got a key and your name on the insurance, and it lived at the Main Street Museum. And there was an online booking program where you could, you had to give them a copy of your driver's license, but you became a member, and we just all shared that car. And I could imagine there being a program with like 3 or 4 of those. We ended up and we always had cars. There were a couple of cars over the years. It was never an issue. And there was service agreements and things. What ended up happening was that became virtually impossible to insure, to do the auto insurance. So anyway, I could see a program like that. If we had a little community car garage with 4 or 5 cars, that could save a lot of people the need to have their own vehicle. It was super convenient. So just throwing that out there from the archives.
Great, thanks, Kim. Lori, I think you've got your hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that actually that is put back in place, Kim. It is actually, we have a reserved spot in the town square parking lot for that car. A group of people were, and it does include some people from the Center for Cartoon Studies, were able to come up with a system. It took a very, very long time because of the insurance and the liability and getting everything like that. But I believe it's still active. It was before COVID. So you get in touch with Michelle, but that is an example of at least putting that out there. And we make a space actually dedicated towards that in the town square parking lot for that vehicle. So it was sort of like, hey, let's see how this works. And at least we can give it a parking space, dedicated for it. So we have a sign up there for that. I hope it's still active. I haven't really talked with Michelle about it in a while, but you may want to just check in with her. And I think that is a good idea. It's in its, it's kind of in its infancy there of trying to make a go of it. in a more structured way, because I think the liability that they ran into was just more than what people wanted to continue to take on without getting some more specific criteria. So, but yeah, we definitely should look into that more.
I think, Joe, you had your hand up. I was trying to keep track of physical hands and virtual hands.
This is why I love Vermont. I've lived in Buffalo, Baltimore, Washington, Miami. And quite frankly, this would never happen there. And so this is why I love moving to this area of the country. And thank you for enlightening me, because I am a city boy having moved to rural Vermont. And this is a tremendous idea. So thank you.
Great. Good. I think, Dennis, you had your hand next, the physical hand. Yep.
Yeah, on the impact fees again, I'm quite sure that when we took them away, we put the way we worded it, it was something like rescind rather than remove, meaning we could reinstate them anytime we chose. We were given it a time to see how it worked. And when they put the impact fees in, I think 89, this is going off memory, it's a terrible thing for me to do. It made sense, and it made sense to do away with them when we did. And I think it'd be great, we as a board discuss that further and see if they make sense again and go from there. But I know we can reinstate them the way we termed it. Thank you.
Great. All right, Tracy, you've got your hand up. I don't see any other hands, so maybe you want to wrap this up for us.
Well, I had a little bit of a sad moment because I heard Kim talking and I Googled one of my favorite things about living in the San Francisco Bay Area, which was Zipcar. So you could go to a parking lot, you could find it on an app, and you could sign up as a Zipcar user, pick the car of your choice. So do you want a Prius? Do you want an all electric? Do you need a pickup truck because you're going to Home Depot for your mulch? And you could rent it out by the hour, by the day, by the weekend. And it took care of a lot of that infrastructure risk. Because Zipcar managed all the insurance and all of those sorts of things. They're not here. They are in Miami, Joe. So the next time you're in Miami, hook it up with a Zipcar. They're big in places like Boston and San Francisco Bay Area where people just don't own cars and they use Zipcar when they need to not rely on public transportation. And then Google also helpfully told me that there is another methodology, which sounds kind of what like Kim was talking about, what Lori said that Cartoon Studies is trying to do, called Get Around, which is a car sharing marketplace. So it's like the Airbnb of cars. Now, whether or not you'd want to loan out your car to your fellow resident, make sure that they aren't drinking soda in your car and spilling it, I don't know, but it does allow people to, through the modern technology that we have available to us, swing by downtown and borrow Kim's car to go to Home Depot.
Great. All right, Tracy.
All the time.
I believe
Tracy,
Dartmouth has those cars.
Thanks, Dennis. That might be a conversation I can have with Julia over there in Hanover the next time we sit down for a cup of tea.
Okay, I think, Tracy, I don't see any other questions or comments. So I think, or Dan, one of you guys want to take it away?
Thank you very much, Chuck. One thing that we didn't talk about, which is what some of the cities do, like in Quebec or New York City with the horses and stuff. I know there's a question about how ethical that is, but it's pretty green, pretty friendly, and we can use the manure in the garden, so we can resource it all top to bottom. So just thinking outside the box, we don't want to leave anything unturned. So I'm just throwing that out there. We've got a lot of farms around. Wouldn't have to worry about parking and paving things over, and everyone would be happy. So it could be a calling card for Hartford. So I'm throwing it out there to all of you, and you can come back to me with how we're going to make that happen. Okay. So.
And my
horse
staff
lanes,
is
I
out
guess.
running for the hills. Like it looks like my staff's on here, but they're like, Dan just asked if we could maybe do like horse parking downtown, and they're out of here.
They're going to collect the horses and bring them in for the night so that they're well fed. There's no question in my mind. Okay, anyway, there is some seriousness to that, but maybe, there are a lot of issues, but I could, could be something that would be the only town in the Upper Valley that does, and people might love it, who knows? And we do have several farms in the area and farmers, so, you know.
I'll take the manure, Dan.
Okay, see, one problem already solved. Okay, so thank you guys. That was a great discussion. As you know, Allie really laid the ground rules for us, and I think people are very respectful of that. So thank you, and Chuck, thank you again for leading us through that in a very professional way, keeping people on track, making sure everyone was heard. So I think that was a great first listening session. So Tracy, thank you for bringing us that format. Thank you to the select board member for all your pieces in this, etc. So yeah, this went very well. So hopefully we look forward to our next. I think we have 2 scheduled again, and you know, and all the public that participated was great. So I think that will bring us to any other further select board comments about things necessarily not related to parking if we haven't touched on them already. We'll entertain that now. Okay, so then we will go to the consent agenda. So we'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Does anyone would like to make that motion? Joe, go ahead.
Before we do, I think we may have skipped public comments. I'm not sure if anybody has any, but.
Yeah, we can take more public comment. So actually we have a comment from Lanny, so bring Lanny over. Lanny, you there?
Thank you. Lenny Collins from Queechee. Yes. You hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can get a follow-up to the email I sent on May 15th regarding the town encampment response policy in terms of the town managers making policy where it clearly states that the policy shall be made by select board. And I'm curious what our process is on clearing that up. I'm sure it was just an oversight, and I'm sure that it's going to be taken care of. I just want to remind somebody that it should be followed up on. And if somebody could let me know what that is, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Lenny. We'll follow up that in detail. I think my understanding was it was a recommendation from the town manager to the board, which the board didn't have any further comment about. So we, we approved that in that method as a recommendation coming from the town manager.
Follow up, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, all policy according to the charter is established by the board. So it would be something that the board would have to sign off on as a unit, and I believe and then passed off to Tracy. As I said, I'm sure it was just an oversight.
We're getting some clarification from VLCT. The staff and my interpretation of the charter is that directs the town manager at all times to comply with policy that is created and officiated by the select board. So if the town manager does not agree with policies set down by the select board, they are still directed to comply with that policy. It does not prevent the town manager from enacting policy beyond that in order to facilitate the administration and the day-to-day business of the town. We're working with the LCT, who has been completely inundated, and our town lawyers to get clarity on that.
I would like to have follow up on that when it does occur. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. Any other public comments, questions? Last call from the board, anything? Okay, so we will go over to consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve payroll ending May 29, 2020. Approved meeting minutes of May 18th, 2021. I got my hot tub time machine today and tried to go back, so that was what just happened. Approved meeting minutes May 18th, 2021. Approved the AP manifest of May 28th, 2021 and June 1st, 2021.
And is there a second? Second from Dennis. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the vote. We can do thumbs up if it's unanimous. Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I don't think we have any other business before us that I'm aware of this evening, so we will entertain a motion to adjourn. Ally's making a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kim. All in favor, thumbs up. Okay, thank you guys very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks in person.
So much for making this happen, Tracy.
Yes,
and
thank you very
Ally
much.
And
Awesome. Great meeting. Thanks, guys. 8